This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to today's webinar. Apologies, I couldn't make it down as initially planned. A few things came up last minute, but I thought we began with a session irrespective. So, user story mapping for digital projects. I've had a number of requests from the agile coaches. Expressing their interest in user story mapping. And it's kind of something that has recently it's been invaluable to myself as well. I thought you would really be the best time to have a talk about it, talk you through what user story mapping is and how we can actually apply it to actually deliver digital projects in a better fashion. So that's all we're talking about today. So for the new coaches that I've just joined, now there's a couple of coaches that have joined today's session. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Olumide Akere. I have a PhD in agile software engineering. My PhD was centered around investigating the impact of agile practice on the software quality of continuous delivery projects. Agile practices are investigated when mainly pair programming, test-driven development, peer testing, and having an on-site customer with continuous delivery project teams. I was back in 2015. I've got over 10 years experience in agile software development. First time I heard about agile was back in 2008 when I was working at Lloyd's Banking Group, and ever since then I've grown into agile, and it's something I've got passion for. So I've worked in various sectors, worked in education sector, worked in health sector, worked in insurance sector, worked in financial sector as well. Again, I've come through various positions ranging from agile coach to product owner, product manager, agile consultant, etc. So kind of the main roles you expect of agile and continuous delivery teams. Really, most recently, I've worked more as an agile coach and as a senior product owner as well. My interest, I've got big interest in agile development, as I've said. Anytime I hear agile, my head tingles. I really want to pick up on it. I'm quite eager to learn new stuff about agile. Continuous delivery is a very great concept of continuously delivering value to your end users. It's quite integrated with DevOps, using automation to actually deliver software in a quick, efficient, and sustainable manner to the end users, and trying to bridge the gap between the development team and the operations team. Agile practice, I've got very, very good passion for agile practice, whatever tools, whatever concepts you actually apply to agile and continuous delivery teams to actually help them to improve better. I like to learn, I like to investigate how they actually work. Some work, some don't work. Part of being agile is to be open to undergoing experiments with these practices. So seeing for yourself what works for your team and what won't work for your team. BDD, behavior driven development, is something I've also got very, very big passion for. Writing the acceptance criteria with examples and automating them. It kind of brings customers, the actual end users of the product, into the development team. They write what they expect of the behavior of the system to be as examples, and I think that's a great way of actually developing software and making sure you integrate your customers and users with your into your development process. And I'm a big Man U fan. We've not had the best of times recently, but massive, massive Man U fan. That's it. Quick housekeeping rules. Recording of the webinar will be available to view. I'll email the link to you, or Cheryl will email you after the session. But I'll be coming through at some point, middle of July. And then obviously we can always talk about stuff. By that time, I hope you have practiced this as well. So I'm quite eager to know how you've actually put this into practice, what your experiences have been, and you've got along with it, really. But in the meantime, feel free to email me, call me, if you've got any questions to ask, or if you need any reference or anything like that in relation to the user map we'll be talking about today. Please take the time to complete a post-webinar survey. I'll pop up at the end. Again, it helps myself and Sherry to kind of know how to, what to improve on in terms of delivering these self sessions to your agile coaches. Throughout the sessions, feel free to type your questions in the question box. I'll try and make the session as quick as possible, and then we can have some time at the end of it to quickly run through any questions you've got. So just keep typing the questions at the end of the session. I'll run through the session questions and provide the answers to the questions. Okay. Cool. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to have a quick recap of what user story is. It's not going to be the basics. I expect we're all familiar with what user stories are, how we use them and apply them. So it's not, we're not going to spend much time just trying to talk about what user stories are. It's just going to be a very, very quick recap of what user stories are. We're going to talk about problem issues with flat backlog. Again, this is where we're actually getting with the actual motivation of actually using user story mapping. So we're going to start by talking about problems with the conventional flat backlog. Then we're going to talk about user story mapping. What is user story mapping in itself? What's the structure of a user story map? I'm going to go into those details. I'm going to give an example of how I've applied it to one of the delivery of clinical trial system. After that, just talk through the user story mapping process. Really, how do we go about it from start to finish of creating user story maps? And then I'm going to talk about benefits. And then we'll have the session for the questions. So let's fire on. User stories. What are user stories? Again, we should all be aware what user stories are. User stories are by Alistair Cockburn. User story is a promise for a conversation. So here's what it is. A user story will have a description. It will have we have the acceptance criteria. User story should summarize what is expected of the user of a system. Again, strictly from the user perspective. And what should we have? User story should have the actual requirement, should contain the actual requirement, and it should contain the expected behavior in terms of the acceptance criteria. So, structure of user story, you have your description with widely accepted template of as a user role, I want your goal so that your actual benefit. So as a presenter today, I want to show you my screens during the session so that you can get a view of the slides that we'll be talking about. It's simple as ABC. That's what user story is. But it doesn't end there. You're not going to take everything that's written in the description literally. 3 parts to a user story by Mike Cohn. Says the card, which is coined the 3C actually. And there's a card, which is basically the template we actually write the user story description on, as you can see on the screen. There's a confirmation, which is the acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria, again, I love using DDD for my acceptance criteria because it gets the actual users to get into the development process and for them to write actual examples of the expected behavior of the system. Um, and then you have your card, you have your confirmation, and then you have your conversation. So again, as I say, Alistair Cockburn says, user story is nothing but a promise to have a conversation. That's it. We need to talk about the requirement. We need to talk about the stuff. We need to understand explicitly what the user problem is and what problem we're actually trying to solve. As we all know, writing requirements down is not guarantee of understanding the requirements, experienced in waterfall working. We favor face-to-face communication, explicit communication, discussions around user flow, user experiences, user problems. Based on that, we understand what the actual requirements are and what the user story should solve, what problem the user story should solve. So these are three key things that are required as part of a user story. Again, you have your card, which is the template you're writing it on, brief description, and you have your confirmation, which is the acceptance criteria, and you have the most important, in my opinion, which is the conversation you will have around this. And obviously, you want the entire development team involved, you want the actual user involved with the conversation. In most cases, obviously, you have your business analyst working with the team or the product owner working with the team, or with a proxy for the actual user. But you need those conversations, and then obviously you speak to the development team as well. Most importantly, you speak to the developers, the testers, database analysts, user interface designers. Everyone in the team should all be on the same page and have this conversation around these user stories. So a flat path backlog. This is what we have in most, in most cases. If you don't do story mapping, this is what you basically have. You have your backlog, which has got the prioritized order of items. You've got the backlog should contain your user stories, it should contain your features, it should contain your epics, and basically, and in many cases, you have your defects as well going to this backlog. Backlog basically should contain the list of all the items that is in a pipeline for the team to do that is outside the ongoing sprint or ongoing iteration. As I said, you have your prioritized stuff, which, well, that's the idea. So you should have everything prioritized by the product owner so the team can have visibility into what they should be working on. And this is basically what it is. On top of it, you have the stuff, which is what your team should be working on next. And middle you have more stuff. Bottom, you have even more stuff. Bottom, you have your features and epics. Middle, you usually have stories that have kind of been fine-tuned and groomed to an extent, and then on top of it, you should have the fine-groomed user stories, which should be ready for pickup. But you have this whole number of user stories across various features, possibly across various epics in the backlog. It's a great way of saying what the team should be doing next. It's a great way of saying what is in the pipeline for the team. It's fantastic, and quite honestly, it's worked pretty well. But there are issues with it. Yeah, there are loads and loads of issues with it, which is one of the reasons why we've started talking about user story mapping. So, what are these issues with having this backlog? So many times, I've been involved in product development for over 12 years, and I've so many times I've experienced this situation where we actually deliver high prioritized stuff. You get into prioritization sessions, you have all the stakeholders shouting, using the equal equal method, which is the high paid person's opinion. As person that shouts the most, has his voice heard, and has his features delivered. How many times do we have those times we actually deliver the stuff, but they're actually not usable? Yeah. They're deemed high value, shout on top of it, development team produces it, delivers it. At the end of it, it just doesn't fit. It's not just usable at that point in time because we've missed something. So many times I've experienced it. Again, lack of visibility of actual progress. This is a big, big, big problem. Again, you're in the middle of development. You can't. I kind of funny how to actually see, what's actually left to do. You know, how much more do we have to do? What have we done so far? What can we deliver so far? What would the actual users be able to use at this point? Going through the hand-to-hand, walking through their hand-to-hand user journey. What is our progress? Can't say this. It's very difficult with this flat backlog. Missing requirements and dependencies. So many times as well. We get into the growing sessions, we get into meetings with users. We'll try to understand their requirement. We talk about it, but so many times we miss key important aspects of the expectations from the systems until we deliver the systems that we actually see these missing gaps, these dependencies that should ideally have been captured because we did not have a proper visibility of the user flow from start to finish, what is expected of the user from the actual system. Focus, yes, focus. Many times you actually lose focus of what you actually do. How many times do you have in your backlog things that actually crop up or creep into your backlog that are not directly related to the client deliverable? No, it's the responsibility of the product owner to make sure everything is prioritized and everything is relevant. You've got a backlog, but so many times you have your feature creep, you have things that actually cropping. They are related to the feature, they are related to the actual client deliverable, but you can't actually identify what user is actually going to be using it. It's just it's just a nice to have. And even though it's a nice to have, it's you can't actually pinpoint who actually wants it. And then you end up losing focus, wasting time on this kind of on this kind of story and this kind of requirement. This is one of the problems we have with the conventional backlog. Again, kind of said, you don't know when you actually finish. When you actually finish, you can't really tell precisely how much more you've got to do to actually complete the client deliverable, to actually meet the client requirements, to actually meet the client user goal. Um, it's just really, really difficult. You don't have that view with the conventional backlog. So user story mapping. User story mapping. What is user story mapping? Story mapping is a technique of ordering user stories along two independent dimensions. You have the map, which arranges user activities along the horizontal axis and increasing sophistication of the implementation along the vertical axis. So, with the user story mapping, what we actually want to achieve now is to have an hand-to-hand visual representation of the actual user activities to actually achieve the user goal. We want to try and capture everything visually. We want to see everything um, from start to finish, starting from what the actual client starts with, what the first interaction with the system should be, um, and walk through those steps of the client actually achieving their eventual goal of actually using the system. So on the horizontal axis, as I said, we have the match which sequentially arranges the user activities from start to finish. And on the vertical axis, we want to have those actual requirements again in decreasing order of sorry, in increasing order of sophistication, but decreasing order of priority. That's the word. So so along your vertical axis, from top to down, you want to have decreasing number of priorities of the user stories. So basically, you have your prioritized stories up in the y-axis, but as you're going down and you're delivering those requirements, your system is getting more and more complex, getting more and more sophisticated. They're getting more and more closer to completion and having a full client deliverable. Basically, starting from the MVP, minimum viable product, you gradually increase the level of sophistication of the system as you're going down the y-axis, the vertical axis. Anatomy of the user story map. So as I said, on the x-axis, you want to start again talking about the actual user journey. That's the key thing for user story maps. Start talking about the actual user journey from start to finish, to actually starting the journey of achieving their goal. It's all based on the interaction of the system. So you have on top of user story map, you have your activities. In this case, they're kind of the groupings together of of the major key activities you expect from start to finish, and translating that to software development context. Those will be your teams or your epics, right? Will be your teams or your epics. Um, and what Jeff Patton actually calls is the backbone. So the backbone of your user story map is what you actually have as the key user activities from start to finish. And that's the start of your user story map. You have to start from identifying these user activities, defining what these your themes or epics are from start to finish, and then building on top of that. So for example, if your goal is to get paid for your work at the end of the day, and then your being has what are the main activities you actually get to get paid at the end of the day from when you wake up in the morning. You wake up in the morning, an epic might be to prepare for work, prepare for work. That will include having a breakfast, having a shower, brushing your teeth, and all that kind of stuff. But those are not the activities. The activity there is categorization of all those small activities together as preparation for work. So prepare for work. Another major activity will be to travel for work, right? Another major activity will be to do the actual work. After completing the work, another major activity will then present the work, and after that, you get paid. So that the actual goal of the user is to get paid for what he does at the end of the day, and those activities I've just talked about are actual things that the actual hurdles that the actual person needs to go through to overcome before they actually achieve what they want to achieve, which is to get paid at the end of the day. So that's what we have. Those user activities I've just explained as what we have as the backbone of a user story map. Okay. And then you have your working skeleton. The working skeleton is basically your user stories, if you like. So as I said, increasing order of sophistication from top to bottom. You now want to start putting your user stories together and start building a system. Your first deliverable, or your first release, is what you call the working skeleton. The working skeleton is the minimum acceptable deliverable to the client for the client to actually meet their end goal. So, for example, now with the example I've talked about, the client getting paid at the end of the day, what's the minimum thing that'll be acceptable? First activity we've got prepare for work in the morning. So if you want to be in a rush, because you want to get as quickly, you want to get things done as quickly as possible. You might decide you're not going to have breakfast. You might decide, if you're the type that doesn't fancy Um, that don't mind your mouth smell. You might just prefer. Well, the only thing you need to do is to have a shower in the morning, put clothes on, and that's it. And then after that, you might want to, on your way to travel, you might want to pick up newspapers, you might want to have coffee or whatnot. But if you say, it's part of your minimum things you need to do, you're not going to do that. You're not gonna have coffee. You're not gonna get paper. You just want to travel straight to work, etc. So based on these key activities, you develop your actual smaller elements of the actual requirement, and you prioritize those. And those are things that actually form your user stories in the user story map. And what Jeff Patton we was the main person that actually started this whole concept of the story mapping calls those are tasks. Okay? So you have fundamentally you have two key elements of user story mapping. You have the user story activities, again, which are the themes and epics, which we call the backbone of the user story map. And then you have your elements that actually make up the user story map. You have the walking skeleton and the additions to the walking skeleton, which are your user stories or the tasks. I must say. So I see in the picture here, just using my pen. Okay. So here you've got the skeleton, which is the activities you've got here in green. Okay. And then you've got all these other stuff. You've got your walking skeleton, which is the first release. Okay. The cuts across there, uh, cuts across there again. Okay. You have your first release there. So this is your walking skeleton. And again, as I said, in the context of software development, what you've got here is the highest prioritized items that you have that will actually enable to the actual user to achieve the goal. So as you can see here, as part of the first release, the user actually prioritizes these two items here. Skips this, I can do without this. All right. Goes on to complete this too. Skips this. We can do without it for the first release. Goes on to complete this too. So as you can see there, we're moving from left to right, and we're covering the entire space of the user activities from start to finish to actually achieve the goal. So the first release is the highest prioritized item that will allow the user to actually achieve the goal, albeit it might not be in the fashion they want to achieve the goal. Um, Based on that, you keep an eye on the system, keep an eye on the working skeleton to make the client happier and to get to actually where they want to be. Right. So I've come up with an example. Let me get this off the. Cool. So I've got an example here of an actual user story map using one of the free tools, which I'll talk about later on. It's an application of the user story map to a digital clinical trial drug dispatch system. So I don't know if anyone is familiar with of the end-to-end journey of clinical trial of um, of um, of a drug process. So, you know, you start by when there's any clinical trial, when you have the adverts out, so you want patients to actually enroll in a certain clinical trial, etc. What we do, it starts by registering a patient. We want to register a patient that's actually interested in it. Again, I'll talk about different personas and different users in a short while, but this user story map should actually cover a end-to-end activities considering all the various users of the system. So with this user story map, I'm talking of the requirements basically from this clinical research officer, who's the person actually processes clinical processes requests for patients, etc., from the clinical research center. So the first thing we have, again, I'm talking about the epics here, which are your things, basically. Then, as I said, those are the actual user activities. And this here, just draw my, so what we've got here, section here, is my backbone. It is the backbone of the application. So going to the end-to-end process, we have register patient. When a patient shows interest, comes to the clinical research center and wants to be enrolled in this clinical trial, you manage the patient. You know, you want to be able to delay, update the patient details. If the patient is okay, yeah, we schedule visits for the patient. So the patient needs to come in, and then after that, we screen the patient. The patient needs to be screened to determine if the patient is actually eligible to be enrolled in a clinical trial or not. And after that, you enroll the patient, right? The patient is eligible. You enroll the patient into the clinical trial. After that, you randomize the patient. Okay? And after that, the patient might want to withdraw from the clinical trial for any reason. After that, you transmit the drugs for the patient. So the patient has been randomized and is is into the clinical trial. So they want to dispatch the drugs to the patient, and after that, you want to manage that dispatch, right? Okay. So as part of sprint one, here we've got a walking skeleton. Sorry. Here, sprint one is a walking skeleton, which is a minimum viable product. Minimum viable product is the minimum acceptable deliverable to a client for them to test their hypothesis of the market hypothesis of the system. So the client wants, if the client thinks that having a system will help them improve, will help them, meet the sales target. They think it will improve the efficiency of the customer service team. How do they want to try this out without spending loads and loads of money of actually having a complete system? And what they want to do is to have minimum viable product for them to test that hypothesis, and if they're happy with it, to continue with progression of sophistication of the system. If they think it doesn't actually help them to achieve what they want to achieve, if it feels that hypothesis, they can stop at any point in time. That's the essence of minimum viable product. What's that minimum acceptable deliverable to the client for the client to use to test that hypothesis? So of course, point one there. How do we actually know that this actual system works? What's the minimum thing that the client can go live with? Basically, if the client wanted to go live straight away, what's the minimum thing that's acceptable for that client to go live with to achieve their goals? All right. So sprint one here. On that register patient, I've got generate consent form. I've got assign patient ID. So basically, you make a unique identifier to patient, right? Under the manage patient, I've got create patient. Basically, you need to create patient. Again, this doesn't talk about as part of the deliverable one. It doesn't talk about updating patients because we think we can do that. We can defer that for now. We can live without having to start updating patients or deleting patients for now. So as part of schedule visits, the first thing we need to be able to schedule straight away with the first deliverable is to schedule the screening visit. Once we schedule the screening visit, under the screen patient, you want to be able to access questionnaire. That's very, very key. You can't do anything without that. And then you need to go through this questionnaire, ask right questions to the patient. And then we've got second there, we've got the input patient responses. So based on the patient responses, you can determine if the patient can enroll suitable for enrollment or not. Okay. The patient is suitable for enrollment, and that enroll patient here, we've got enroll suitable patients. Okay. Now after that, once you've enrolled suitable patients, you assign patients to treatment group. Okay. And then you can assign patients to the placebo group. So there are two groups. You have the treatment group and you have the placebo group. And after that, as part of the first deliverable, we want to be able to dispatch the drugs, right? So dispatch the drugs, nothing about canceling the order, nothing about making changes to address or anything like that. No, we can live without that as part of the first release. Let's just get it out first, and then we can build on that sophistication. And that is our minimum viable product. Okay. Now, as you can see on the map, you have the green ticks, which is basically items that have been completed. Okay, and then you have your this little boxes there are actually your estimates for each of those user stories. Okay. As point two here, under register patient, you want to be able to view the patient you registered. And under manage patient, you want to be able to update the patient, right? You want to be able to update the details of patient. If you've got the date of birth wrong, you want to be able to update it. If you've got the address that needs to be updated, you want to be able to do all that as part of the second sprint. And moving on to schedule visits. Now you want to be able to schedule an ongoing visit, right? If the patient is actually past the screening visit, there should be ongoing visits that the patient should be able to partake in. And then you skip, as part of your second delivery, you don't think you need anything for screen patient, you don't think you need anything for your patient. Then attention for randomized patients because you've got these two items there as part of sprint one because they're very, very important. You don't get to withdraw patient. For any reason, the patient is not happy to continue with a clinical trial. You want to be able to withdraw the patient from the clinical trial. And then it goes to, transmit drugs. Now we want to be able to track that delivery. We want to see where the actual delivery is, what estimated date is likely to be delivered, and etc. And after that, as part of managed dispatch, you now want to be able to cancel that dispatch. Again, that's going to but what you can now see is we're gradually building on the sophistication of the system. Again, as you're going down this path, you're actually going down the reduced order of priority, right? Okay. So you have your highest prioritized item above your grade going down, and then from hand to hand here is your walk through of the user activity. Right? So as sprint three is part of register patient, you want to be able to search for patient, you want to be able to restrict patient visibility, you want to be able to, as part of manage patient, you want to be able to delete the patient. As part of the schedule visit, you want to be able to schedule a baseline visit. As part of the screen patient, you want to be able to evaluate patient enrollment suitability. Okay. As part of the withdrawal patient, you want to be able to email clinical research officer of withdrawal. We're now talking of emails. As part of transmit drugs, now you want to be able to choose whichever courier service you want. Now you want to be able to email patient of the drug dispatch, right? So you can see we're gradually building on the sophistication of the system here. And as part of the managed dispatch, you want to be able to cancel the delivery. Okay. Sprint 4, which is the last sprint. You see here, we want to be able to electronically sign the consent form. As part of the schedule visit, we want to be able to reschedule visits. The patients cannot meet up with a particular visit anymore, wants to reschedule, you want to be able to do that. And as part of the enrolled patient, you want to be able to cancel an enrollment now. You want to be able to submit withdrawal reasons. You want to be able to reorder treatment. So basically, if a client wants the same drugs to be sent again after they've completed the doses, you want the client to be able to reorder the treatment. And lastly, under the managed dispatch, you want to be able to update the delivery, right? You want to be able to update, when client says I'm not going to be home, so time, you want to be able to change all these kind of details. Again, as you can see, gradually building on sophistication. So this is a typical example of how you could apply it to any system. Basically, I've basically used the clinical trial drug dispatch system as an example here. But trust me, you can apply this to any digital software project. Okay? Right. So when you're breaking out your user stories, don't forget the principle of actually writing user stories. Very, very, very key. I'm a big fan of the invest principle. Invest, make sure your user stories or tasks, as they're called, the user story maps, make sure they're independent. So one user story should not be dependent on the other. Make sure they're negotiable. And so you can actually negotiate the content of the story. Make sure they're valuable to the end user. Make sure they're estimatable. Make sure they're small enough, and make sure they're actually testable. So you want all those to be part of your part of things you consider when you're actually creating your user stories, right? Um, Obviously, there are many other principles you can follow, but this is a simple way of actually ensuring you are adhering to creating user stories by following this principles. So, what's the mapping process, right? How do you actually go about achieving this? What's the process of actually creating a user story? So first of all, as I say, you actually have to identify your personas, your actual users. So first of all, everyone gets scared. Uh, you have to brainstorm with your stakeholders. Like you get together with, you have to brainstorm. Who are your actual users of the system? What are the various personalities of the people that are using the system? Young, vibrant, the Hill Valley, not very web friendly people. You want people who are actually keen about performance and will prioritize performance over user friendliness. Things like that. You think about different kinds of people, different kinds of users. Where the clinical trials that I've talked about now, you can think of the user perspective from a clinical research officer. You can think of a clinical, trial system from the perspective of the patient, right? A patient wants to have various interactions with the system. You can think of it from the perspective of a clinical trial site manager who's actually kind of interested in a more holistic view of activities for clinical trials. They don't want to see all those nitty details. They want it to be a lot more substantial for them to make informed decisions, basically. So once you've identified your various personas, you now want to identify the goal. What's the user goal? What do these users actually want to achieve? Right. That is key for you to actually identify. Go to the next step and identify your key activities. So these are epics and things, right? From left to right. Let's say you want to identify your epics. Uh, and properly make sure you get all the user activities from start to finish. Again, don't go into the little details yet. Just make sure you capture that user flow. That's what you're interested in. Now, after that, you start going through the little details. Again, get everyone brainstorming your users and your software development team. How do you think these actual users you've identified will want to use the system? What do you think will make their lives better? What do you think will help them to achieve their end goal? Right? Capture all those details. At this point in time, you don't talk about any priority. No, you don't do any of that for now. No. You just want to make sure you capture as many details as possible, right? That's what you achieve. That's what you want to achieve. You want to make sure you capture all those dependencies. You want to make sure you capture all those requirements. Again, it's a lot easier to do when you can see the map and the end-to-end flow. It's a lot easier to ensure you don't actually miss any requirements. Right? Now, after that, you can streamline your releases, right? With your key stakeholders, with your business owners, your product owner, your product manager, you can then prioritize. Okay, guys, what what will be the minimum acceptable as part of the first release, right? What can we what's the minimum viable product? That's where you then need the key skills and the expertise of the domain experts, your product owner, your product manager, your business owner. What do they actually want as part of the key deliverable as the minimum viable products for the actual user to achieve their goal. And based on that, lots of things will happen, right? Obviously you have to consider that time frame. Is it going to fit within a sprint? Is it what the team can deliver within a sprint? If your minimum viable product will not fit within a sprint, that's fine. If it's 2 or 3 sprints, that's totally fine. Everything will depend on the capacity of the team and the velocity of the team, basically, if you like. But you need to identify that minimum viable product, and once you get to that release, that is you having certified the minimum viable product. You can then decide to release it to the client or not. Some clients will want to actually validate that MVP, which is the advisable thing, to see how it actually works. Some don't want to until the actual completion of the entire work. But provided their processes, they should have that working, should have that in production, they should have that tested, and they should actually give that to their actual users to see how it actually works with it. And the key feedback from at that point is very, very, very vital. So the feedback from the MVP will help you to reshape your map. So fits nicely into the info of the map there. Once you start getting this feedback from the users, you can then refine your maps, right? It's a living document. It's not static. No, it's never static. It's going to keep living. And it's going to keep evolving based on the feedback you get from your actual users. So you evolve your map, make sure it's not static, it's dynamic, it's a living. It's a continuous process. You have to keep evolving. So what are the benefits so far that I've actually learned from using these story maps? Quite a few, actually, quite a few hands-on experience there. It exposes risk and dependencies. So many things that you actually see. Uh, that dependencies, and it just helps you to identify those dependencies. This would not work unless this works. You cannot achieve this unless you complete this. But that kind of situation, that's what you want. That's what you want. By bringing that visibility up front, that's what you want to achieve. And it exposes risk as well. So what you want to do as part of your MVP, the kind of the risky stuff, you want to get those done, get those out of the way first. To actually, the risky stuff of these actually achieving their goal. You actually want to get those done. You want to identify those risks as quickly as possible. Secondly, foster stakeholder and team collaboration. As you can see there, it's a wonderful picture. You see everybody working together to achieve the same thing, right? You get all the documents, you get all the all your post-its to actually create all your activities and all your user stories, and it just fosters this bond of everyone talking together, chatting, constructive disagreements, agreements, laughter, everything, people walking together. It's actually very, very fantastic, and it's actually a good team bonding exercise as well, to be honest. I've actually seen an agile coach that actually used as a team bonding exercise, which I've actually advocated as well. Else prioritization, again, because you're seeing everything, you prioritize everything. You can basically see what you can do with for now, what you can do without for now, what you could do without having. You push those down. What you cannot do without, you want to push those up. So basically, it helps you to prioritize with ease. You don't spend hours and hours of time prioritizing your backlog as you would do when you wouldn't spend hours and hours prioritizing your user map as you would do when you're actually prioritizing your actual flat backlog. It puts focus on the user. As I said, your end goal is to make sure the user goal is achieved. Anything you're seeing on the board, anything that actually doesn't partake to actually helping the user to achieve their user goal, it's a story creep, it's a feature creep, take it out. It's not required. So everything there should be associated to one person and at least one type of user, and that should depict what they expect from their interaction with the system, right? So put focus on the user. What's not related to the user doesn't go on there. What's related to the user should be everything you've got on there. Okay? And again, as I said, it helps you to identify your minimum viable product. Once you see your prioritized stuff, you can then have a walkthrough with your key domain experts, your product managers, your product owners, your business owners. What's the minimum acceptable deliverable? Based on that, you map what your minimum viable product is, and you can then see when you can release that. If it's going to be in 2 sprints, if it's going to be in 1 sprint, if it's going to be in 3 sprints, based on the velocity of the team, you identify that. Perfect for relative sizing. Again, you don't need to spend hours and hours of planning poker with this one. Relative sizing, you can easily compare the sizes of the user stories because you can see everything, right? You have visibility of everything. You can see everything. You can put them together. You can compare them. This is the same size of this. This is not the same size of this, and etc. It's just perfect for relative sizing. These are all talking from experience. What tools have I used? Well, I've only used one of these, but I've had a number of agile coaches I've actually trained. I've actually tried a number of these other tools as well. Cardboardit.com. It's all these tools, by the way, are cloud-based. They are all cloud-based feature mapping tools. We have storiesonboard.com, featuremap.co, which is what I've actually used in that example. It's very, very simple, easy to use. User friendly. And you have craft.io as well. Feel free to give them a try and go and see how it goes. I would really recommend this. Anyone that wants to progress for them, know a lot more on user story mapping. Get this book. You won't regret it. It's one of the best books I've actually ever read. Jeff Patton is the guy that actually popularized this concept of user story mapping. Get a book, and let's talk. I'm happy to talk about the practicalities of it. Again, feel free to email me. I'll be coming to the office at some point in July, and we can have coffee and talk about your experiences and stuff like that. I'm really, really keen on you agile coaches trying this out with your respective teams and share experiences. Thanks, guys. I hope that made some sense. I really apologize for not making it again to the office. I very much prefer face-to-face communication, face-to-face meeting. But hopefully we can catch up properly again when I pop in. All right. Any questions, guys? I'm just gonna go through questions I've got. Oh yeah, we've got 4 questions so far. Okay. So how do you get started and get buy-in? So get started. I've got a slide on that. How do you get started? Again, what you want to start with is just gonna go back to the slide. Identify your personas, as I've said. You start by identifying your personas, you start identifying the goals of each of the users, you start identify the activities. In that sequence, you have to follow that sequence. If you want to experiment with any other system, with any other sequence, you're more than welcome to. Again, it's all about experimenting, right? Trying new things, contextualizing these ideas and see what your experience are. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to have bad experience about it. But this is the sequence that's worked for me. It's worked for a few other people that I've actually talked about the story mapping as well. So identify your personas, identify your goal for each user, identify the activities, the epics and themes, identify the tasks, that are user stories, streamline your release, and again, make sure your user story map is not static document. Make sure it evolves. You want it to evolve, right? And how do you get buy-in? You get buy-in by talking and convincing the entire, your stakeholders, your business people, your development about the problems you're having with a flat backlog or you cannot do with a flat backlog. As I said at the beginning of the talk, so many things you can't do with so many issues with a flat backlog. Still for you to say what to do next, but so many issues with it. You don't have visibility of where you are. You don't know how much you've achieved. You get to lose focus of the actual user goal. You have stories creeping in that are not particularly related to users. Etc. So you have to convince. Again, I like using data. I use data to actually express your dissatisfaction at the way things are presently. There will always be pushback to try new stuff, as always, but you have to manage that. You have to present a case for it, and that's how you get your buying. Is there another sizing technique prescribed? Um, Is there any sizing technique prescribed? Well, no, not at all. I've seen teams do it without actually sizing. So again, if your team is using Kanban, for example, and you don't necessarily have to size as user stories. Not necessarily Kanban. You have Scrum teams that don't size as well. So you don't even need to size. And if you're gonna size, you can use whatever sizing technique you use. If you're using story points, if you're using t-shirt sizes, whatever works for you. Basically, that's the fundamental. So which of these tools is free? I'm not quite sure. Feature.co, which I've used. It's a free online tool. Um, I know a couple of the others are actually free as well, but I'm not 100% certain. Which of those are free. But try them. Feature.co, I really recommend. It's very very user friendly. Um, and it's free to use for a certain number of users. For a certain number of users, it's free to use. So feel free to have a go. Um, who facilitates this session? Okay. Right, that's an interesting one. I think anyone could really. Anyone who's knowledgeable about what user mapping. You usually want to be the agile coach. That's why we're having this session here. So the agile coach who ideally facilitate it. But again, it can be the scrum master if you've got one. It can be anyone that's actually knowledgeable of how user story mapping works, really. Do you create separate maps for separate personas? No. You have one single map for different persona. I'm just gonna go to slide that shows uh, right, okay. So as we can see here, you've got each of these cards on the board, which actually shows. So each card color represent one type of user. So you have different users here on your left hand side. So you can see different users here. You have your receiver, you have your hosting store, you have your customer, your regional, different users here, and those are the different users that actually uh, those are the different colors of these user stories that are actually relevant to those users. So if you see any color card on the board, you can easily identify that to the actual expected user of that system that is interested um, in that in that requirement in that user story. So no, as you said, you start your session by identifying all the users and the personas and having a walkthrough of the actual user goal of each of these users. And then what you want to do is to make sure you fill in all the gaps for all the users. Make sure you don't miss any user out. It's very, very important. And then you have everything on one board. So you only have one user story map. The user story map should contain all the requirements, all the relevant stories uh, that are required for the end-to-end user walkthrough of the user achieving their end goal. So how do you identify stories for each person, and that's the last question I've got here. How do you identify stories for a person? Again, as I said, you brainstorm with everyone that you've got in the team. It's very, very important for you to have the domain experts, and the actual user of the system. Have them sit down with you, have them in the session, have them to talk about the pain points, have them to walk through what they will need to do to actually achieve their goal. Based on that, for each person, now you sit down, you write down these user activities. Again, prioritize writing the user activities first before you then start going into the details of the user stories of the lower level activities that are expected in each of these activities. So it should just be one session or two sessions, basically. Get everyone together, most importantly the users and your business people, your product owner, your product manager, sit down with them, and even the development team together. You'll be quite surprised the number of gaps some development teams will actually come up with in terms of what the user is expected of the system. And based on that, you can then identify and then fill in all the gaps, basically. Okay, and that's all I've got for now. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions whatsoever, again, feel free to email me. Feel free to call me. Or aside that, at some point in July, I'll be popping in and we can have discussions again. I'm very, very keen on you guys trying this out. Very, very keen on hearing your experience of using story maps. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye bye.